All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for handing that over to us. Jessica, welcome to the Global DeFi Summit 2021. We're going to be having an exciting conversation today about how alternative chains are gaining traction in today's space and time. We're going to start off today by heading around the room and just kind of doing some introductions. So let's start off with Medha.
Hi, nice to meet everybody. I'm Medha Parlikar, the CTO and one of the co-founders of Casper Labs, the company that built the Casper network. Happy to be here.
And Kendall?
Hey everyone, my name is Kendall. I'm the head of product at Near, which is a proof of stake layer 1 blockchain. And yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. We'll go to Nichols next.
Hi, Speedy Nichols, founder of Blizzard.money on Binance Smart Chain.
And Ogle.
Hello, I'm Ogle, founder of BSC Gems.
And last but not least, Greg.
My name is Greg Osuri. I'm the CEO founder for Akash Network.
Excellent. And how's everybody doing today?
Wonderful. Beautiful day in San Francisco.
Very
Fantastic.
Good. Exciting time for DeFi. So today for this panel, I really want to help for the audience just paint the broad picture and kind of give some context. What's going on in your particular niche inside of DeFi, whether that means at the enterprise level, at the BSC level. What does that kind of look like? And the first question I have that we're going to start off with is, what is the current state of DeFi in your opinion? And what are you seeing in your particular ecosystem? Let's start off with Kendall here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it depends on the ecosystem for sure as to what's happening. I think on Ethereum, we've seen a lot of the primitives be kind of established. And, I think people are working now on some like higher order application and use cases. On Near and some of the newer blockchains, those primitives are still kind of being laid. There's still room for some of these core components to kind of be built out. And I mean, I'm hoping that, we can get to the point where we can sort of short circuit a lot of the experimentation that needed to be done to like understand how to build AMMs, how to build generalized lending, what you needed to ensure, and can kind of start, coming up with some more interesting use cases earlier. Things like liquid staking on proof of stake networks, I think is like a core primitive that can be injected really early in an ecosystem.
Excellent. Anyone else, feel free to jump in here. I know a lot of your companies are in various spaces inside of the DeFi ecosystem. So, take us from a broad level, whether that's an enterprise perspective, maybe Medha, you want to elaborate on kind of what Casper Labs is doing and what's you're seeing from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Casper Labs is focused on enterprise adoption. So we're actually working with financial institutions to build, traditional financial products that use blockchain technology along with, identity solutions. So we want to be part of the wave that helps banks and other financial institutions leverage public blockchain technology to build financial instruments for consumers. So we're really focused in on that. Of course, with respects to DeFi, we're not ignoring it as well. We are building bridges to help, provide greater liquidity and access to the Casper protocol.
Yeah, and I think as far as where I work, so as I said, I'm the founder of BSC Gems, but really it's Gems, which includes Polygon Gems, BSC Gems, AVAX Gems, a whole bunch. It's like every sort of side chain, just not Ethereum. And so as Kendall was saying, like it actually is really like it depends on which one you're in, right? So if you're in BSC right now, which happens to be my favorite, it's rife with scams. Like that's just the situation. It sucks, but it's just, I mean, that's the situation right now. If you're in Polygon, it's unusably slow. And so, you have that situation. If you're on Ethereum, you can't afford anything unless you can't afford to actually do anything unless you have lots of money. If you're on AVAX, there's three things to do and then you get bored. So it's like, it just depends on what you're looking at and what the state is. Most of it is, I mean, this is sort of like, in my opinion, this is really, it's kind of cool because we're gonna learn probably from each of these, what's working, what's making things slow, what's making things cheap, what's making things fast, what makes things cool, what's like sticky, what keeps people around, and hopefully at some point or another, one of these things is going to win out.
Yeah, definitely, Greg. I think you might want to unmute.
That helps. Yeah. I share the sentiment with Ogle here and Kendall, and in terms of Ethereum, really providing the primitives that kicked off DeFi. And as we're seeing now, DeFi moving into interchain. Cosmos Ecosystem's first DEX was launched Saturday. It had a phenomenal launch, attracted about $40 million in liquidity without building bridges. And in a world where you have a lot of scams or performance or unusability, Cosmos really has a beautiful, usability first tendency for most Cosmos projects, because it's a lot more expensive to launch a Cosmos in terms of bootstrapping your security and whatnot. So that tend to attract higher quality products like Osmosis, right? So you're super excited. I mean, launching Osmosis was a game changer even for us as Akash Network liquidity. We're a publicly traded token, and I think what we're seeing is a true a sovereign chain interaction that's happening over IBC, and that's just going to open a whole lot of things like what Kendall was talking about, liquid staking. We're seeing persistence and all amazing products right now building liquid staking because Cosmos network actually has staking that secures the network and pretty much when you can aggregate a lot of these like yield generating assets, you're going to open up a whole new realm. So where we are, yes. DeFi began with Ethereum and with Polygon, all the side chains. It became interchain. Now with Cosmos, it's truly becoming interchain in the sense you're having multiple chains that have different things they do. Like Akash is a cloud computing network. It is not a DeFi product, but adding that extra yield bearing utility for the Akash network token through interchain is something that we have never seen before. So really excited for interchain DeFi future.
Yeah, I want to hear from Nichols as well in this topic, but I do want to circle back and touch on that liquid proof of stake concept and kind of unpackage that. So Nichols, why don't you tell us a little bit about like what you're seeing with Blizzard.money in particular on the Binance Smart Chain?
Yeah, I mean, Ogle and I play in pretty much the same space, Polygon, BSC, and overall the network is, BSC is very much in need of good developers, with all the scams going on right now. And that's what we're trying to do at Blizzard.money is just make it a safe place to use DeFi. As far as Polygon, it's building out infrastructure and making the chain run well. So very much agree with Ogle.
Is there ever a point in time when scams will stop, or what will prevent those from happening? I hear that happening a lot, not just on BSC, but on several other chains as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning of BSC, it was you would see a lot less of them because it was centralized. There was no bridge to ETH, and now you have like AnySwap and other decentralized bridges that people can move money off of the chain rather than going to a centralized exchange like Binance. Sure. So it's a really it's a tough thing to combat.
Interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. We were really dreading, the moment we saw the announcement that AnySwap was coming to BSC. I was like, oh Christ, here we go. Like this is the beginning of the end for Happy Days over here. Because everyone's going to start coming in because they have a way to get off, right? And so to answer your question, like, are we gonna see this stuff end? I mean, it really depends on a few things, right? It depends on do these side chains, any of them that are centralized anyway, do they use the ability they might have to put walled gardens up to stop people from getting away, right? That's the first thing. Two, do we educate users in ways that are useful? So do we show them what the issues are they should be looking out for, and then to make it where it's less likely that scammers can get away with tons of money? Three, do projects like Safer Moon, which some of you guys may have heard of, which is making this product where basically people can come and launch their own tokens, but with verifiably safe code. Do people utilize platforms like that and say, oh, I'm not going to go and put money into a project unless it's been launched from a platform that I know is doing this a safe way? Who knows? These are all things that are sort of being worked on at different angles. And then four maybe is are we going to be regulated to the point and sort of trackable to the point that people are getting in trouble, like serious trouble for doing bad things, right? So any of those four things, actually just one of those four things probably could eliminate most of these. And so we have different prongs we can come at this with.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I do want to circle back on kind of like the evolution of DeFi and like where we're heading. All these chains kind of have their whether it's liquid proof of stake, proof of work, zero proof of knowledge. There's tons of different things kind of happening right now. But is there going to be an ultimate chain that will rule them all, or what are we kind of seeing for future evolutions here?
And that's definitely not the way that it's going, right? I mean, you can already see, like, I mean, we have two guys here from the BSC community, which has done a fantastic job. Polygon's been getting a lot of traction, Cosmos as well, Near to some degree. And Polkadot's hardly even really live yet. And so those chains are probably going to get a lot of traction too. And then we have the rollups that are coming out as well that are, the like true layer 2 on Ethereum. And each of these components is going to get some traction. The space is growing tremendously. I think each chain has their different trade-offs. They have the different communities too. There's different kind of like actors that like behave in different ways in each of these communities. And I think as like DeFi grows and expands and more retail, more institutional comes into it. Casper as well, like who's targeting enterprise. Like you're going to see different chains, different ecosystems that are just going to serve different communities. So I think it's multi-chain is here to stay. I really don't think it's going away.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't see one chain ruling them all in any aspect. In fact, I've seen a lot of chains already evolve separate from DeFi that are, specific they have use cases, right? They're optimized for a certain niche. And I think you're going to continue to see that happening even in DeFi and the financial sectors.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I mean, I'm a sovereign maximalist. I believe, sovereignty is critical for scalability in general. So we're seeing, I believe in a multi-chain future. I think we're going to have can't really think about how much of a breakdown we're going to have between shared state systems versus sovereign systems. Shared systems are great because they're quicker to iterate. And of course, that'll result in a lot of scams and whatnot. Non-shared or sovereign systems are harder to scam because, it's expensive to bootstrap security. So you tend to attract higher quality projects. So, the market behavior will ultimately decide as to where the liquidity is trusted. But I think a future will be a multi-chain future, for no doubt.
Yeah, I think just sort of echoing what Medha said, it really is based on sort of, I mean, it's probably going to be based on what is the purpose of you being on the chain to begin with. Maybe it's going to be depending upon the niche you're in. And so, for example, if you look at like traditional financial institutions who have fiduciary duties to make sure that the money is safe, they're likely going to want to be on a network that is as safe as possible, as low likelihood of losing money forever, as something that's like open and sort of more the crypto ethos, right? It's going to be a little bit different of a thing. On the other hand, if you're someone who is a gambler, probably your goal is just to find the place that's got the fastest transactions to get you the most money as fast as possible. If you're doing things that you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it depends on different sort of purposes. And I think that it's very similar to like the question that people have where they say, well, can there be more than one coin, or is it all going to end up just being Bitcoin? And I think that, I mean, clearly that's it's not going to end up being Bitcoin. You look at the real world, we have credit cards, we have wire, we have ACH, we have cash, we have all these different things that are transacting essentially the same underlying instrument, right? But some of them are more secure, some of them are faster, some of them have the ability to charge back, some of them are not traceable, right? And so there's different reasons to have different ways of transacting and doing these things. And I think the same thing goes for these networks.
Yeah, I agree. Shared security means you're also having shared budget on how you secure assets. Like Ethereum's shared security model effectively, mandates that you have the same level of budget for an NFT that is a GIF or a DeFi protocol that has $100 million worth of lockup, right? So the shared security kind of like breaks down at economics. That's why gas fees are high for anything you want to do. So there's no way in hell that there's going to be like a single chain rule all kind of world because shared security is not homogeneous.
So I want to ask though, so what defines safe in this space? Does that mean more centralized, less centralized, completely decentralized? Is there a spectrum? What does that kind of look like? Nichols, I'll kind of direct this towards you. Looks like you might be on mute there. Medha, would you like to jump in on this one?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh gosh, this is a really good question when you talk about safety, right? So when we think about safety in the layer one world, we think definitely about security of the underlying protocol, and we want it to be as decentralized as possible. So that goes without saying, right? But I think when you think about from a consumer perspective, it's like, hey, if somebody steals $20 million from this DeFi protocol, what are like from a regulatory perspective, from a governance perspective, like what's my recourse, right? And so is definitely different layers when you talk about, is DeFi safe, right? And it's not a straight line answer, I think, right? Because part of what makes Ethereum so powerful and a lot of the proof of work networks and even Casper is that, these decisions are more or less immutable. And the minute you crack open that Pandora's box, you say, oh, nope, we're going to go back and change something. Now you've totally gone and done it. Right. And so I don't think it's a straightforward answer. I think it's a bit of a thorny issue in terms of, what do people do when what's the recourse, right? In the event that there is a hack or there is a theft, how can people be made whole again? It's a big challenge. I don't think it's an easy thing to answer.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So I do want to kind of also address, like, where are we in terms of adoption, whether that means at an enterprise level, institutional level, more of an end user, like what is everyone kind of seeing in the market itself?
I can speak about enterprise. So from our perspective, we are observing that enterprise is extremely interested in the product offering we have. They recognize the value of public blockchain. I think they just need some guarantees around their ability to maintain and manage their code, basically their on-chain logic, but definitely a lot of interest in using public blockchain, given that some of their base requirements are met, so they can continue to satisfy their customers, their investors, and their board members. So lots of interest there. Specifically with respects to banks, I think they would look to reducing risk. I think risk reduction is really, really important. So streamlining compliance operations, reducing risk within their organization, and looking to blockchain to do that without, and then they will eventually look at, implementing new products or even existing products using blockchain technology. But definitely a lot of interest, very, very open to exploring.
Right on.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very early both on like retail, institutional, early on both. Institutions can't really deploy much capital yet. They still need a bit more clarity around like compliance and also security, right? I mean, yeah, you hear about not just like, smart contract issues, but there was Stakehound that had an issue with a kind of an enterprise grade sort of, key management supplier that, ended up losing the keys. I mean, not sure who's at fault there, but they see those things and get pretty scared. So while they're like waiting, they see these yields and now large amounts of money that are earning these yields. It's billions. They want to play, but they're not sure they can do it in in a compliant or secure way. And then on the retail side, the biggest issue there, I think, is just kind of both user experience, which we've been banging on about forever, but also just on ramps. BSC actually might have one of the best on ramps in that they have a close relationship with Binance, but even that still can be pretty confusing actually when you're trying to really get onto these platforms. And then Ethereum's too expensive for most retail who wants to try out something new. The cost of making a mistake is enormous, just in gas costs even. So that's kind of not really an option. And then a lot of the newer chains, don't yet have really smooth on ramps. Usually you have to use either Ethereum, BSC, or something else. So I think it's still very early days. I mean, there's probably 1 million or much less even kind of really active users of a lot of these protocols and these products. So it's still expanding.
Yeah, it depends on. I mean, whenever you ask the question of how early we are, it depends. I think a little bit. I mean, either way, we're early. Period. We're very early, in my opinion. I think everyone else here. But how early we are from like a time perspective is different, maybe, than how early we are from like a spectrum of optimum like blockchain. In other words, the regulators and the governments could make the time perspective mean we're way early, because they could slow this down a lot by being very annoying about things. Like, I mean, China is doing this right now. You see, it's slowing things down tremendously over there. But the spectrum of the actual development continues, right? And so that's going to keep on going. But when are we going to see mainstream users actually coming onto it, utilizing it? I mean, it's going to be a while, and I think most of that probably is for the reasons that Kendall said. At least from like the end user point of view, is because on ramping is annoying as can be. Even if you're technically savvy, it's still terribly difficult. And then you have all this, they have these security issues, of course.
Yeah. And when are we going to expect like a much larger adaptation from, from that institutional perspective? It sounds like there needs to be the regulation, there needs to be guidance. Which countries or which regions in particular do you feel like are kind of really taking the lead? Obviously, China has is trying to deploy their native currency, digital currency, but like what everyone kind of seeing out there?
I mean, the obvious elephant in the room is El Salvador, right? I mean, they made Bitcoin the national currency, so that the implications of that is beyond just a country, a sovereign accepting open source money. It's the fact that Bitcoin will be recognized as a global currency and should be respected by U.S. banks in the U.S. I think that's sort of like a sneaky way to establish a more the reality, which is everybody, every bank that interacts with an El Salvador business will have Bitcoin wallets enabled to the user. So, I concur for most part, right? We don't really have a good on-ramp, or we don't really have good user experience. And I think a lot of that, if you used the Cosmos or the Osmosis DEX, you can really see where the future of a low-fee, hyper interactive platform will go. So I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of usability. But on-ramp is still a huge issue. Without that being solved, I don't see how mainstream adoption will happen. And that said, like, you're seeing sovereigns now, solving the on-ramp problem. It's only a matter of time. I think the on-ramp problem will be solved. Will it be a crypto-native solution, or will it be more of a policy-driven solution? I don't know. But it's bound to happen sooner than later.
I just want to say that I've never actually touched Cosmos, but Greg's doing a great job selling it here. It's making me kind of want to open up a new tab while we're in here and check it out.
Yeah, Osmos is beautiful. I mean, it's launched by Sunny Agrawal, who's it's very well-respected member of the Cosmos community. He was a research scientist and attracted over $40 million in TVL in less than 3 days. And I mean, I'm just obsessed with it. So.
I can tell. I now with DeFi and government, I do want to kind of better understand, like, can DeFi actually be regulated? If so, what will that look like? And then what are some of the biggest risks or benefits of regulation for DeFi?
Oh, I think regulation is coming, and I'm actually very afraid how that's going to look like, right? Like, one of the things that's underlooked in DeFi is domain name ownership. So, like, if you go to, Uniswap, or I'm going to throw Uniswap under the bus, but app.uniswap is registered under Hayden Adams. So even though you're not really decentralized and all that, you still can be construed as a facilitator because you own the domain name and you're actually hosting a financial product that's not regulated. Right? So I don't know when it'll be horrible if something were to happen to people hosting DeFi websites, right? So there are that's just scratching the surface as to the different risk parameters that I see in DeFi. Like, there are people, of course, doing mitigation around domain names. If you look at what Serum is doing, they're not actually hosting, but they're having a lot of UIs being hosted by people. But I think people are not taking the domain name issue seriously enough. And when the hammer drops, it's going to be really bad.
Yeah, there used to be Namecoin that was trying to kind of hit that back in 2012, 2013, I think it was, the domain issue. And then there are a couple of new ones coming out now that are doing that. I'm not really sure how that's going to land, but I can tell you, as someone who spent the last 24 hours trying to track down the people who did the big scam for Stable Magnet, the domain name has been a great weak vector. Because they had to register it somehow, and that turns out to be a spot where we can we can utilize to find bad actors, and so it's going to be able to be utilized to find good actors too, the way that we see them.
Yeah, that's why we have solutions, right? Like Handshake, which is amazing. They have over 1 million domains that are being used on Handshake, and there's technologies like Skynet or Saya where you can actually host a static website and configure your Skynet to talk to Saya, right? So that way you're fully anonymous, and ideally you want to de-risk yourself and have users run different UIs instead of you hosting a UI. In the ideal scenario, I think we have decentralized technologies where you don't do you don't post any identifiable information and still conduct your business pretty safely. So we have the tech. It's going to be one of those terrible events that'll make people realize how important privacy and decentralization is. And regulation is bound to happen, and it's going to be nasty, and we're all going to make it after that, I think. Because
is that the biggest obstacle for growth?
Regulation?
Yes.
I wouldn't say biggest obstacle. I mean, I would say a big obstacle. I think biggest obstacle for growth is still on-ramp and user experience. But as they improve, you're going to have regulation come down. But I think once we go off that hump, it's going to be unstoppable. But it is a hump, I believe, that we have to face.
I mean, I'm not
like
completely convinced.
I'm sorry, Medha.
No, it's okay. I mean, I'm not completely convinced that regulation is going to be horrible. I think it is definitely coming for sure. And I think how we as a community, a bigger community across all the layer ones, across all the DeFi protocols, how we conduct ourselves as a community and what we demonstrate to those people that are watching, I think plays a big role in how the if and how badly the hammer could potentially come down, right? One of the things I used to work for a sales tax company, so I'm intimately familiar with the way they make these kinds of determinations around taxation or regulation of a particular good or service. And right now they're watching, right? They're watching and they're waiting, and they have purposely not come out and said anything because they know that muddies the water, right? So when they leave the water muddy, right, they know that they can kind of stymie, right, the growth of that sector and observe and see how things go. They are definitely in a phase where they're learning right now. And I think if they see a lot of scams, a lot of theft, a lot of, right, like even the flash loan thing is really, really dicey. If they see a lot of that, that's definitely going to drive their opinions on how we are regulated, right? And I do think sovereign currencies are coming because they're just not going to want to give up that level of control to decentralized protocols. So I think having a decentralized layer one is super important, to provide more options and accessibility that is not sovereign currencies, because I personally think sovereign currencies are pretty frightening. It's just more control from those government entities, right, in the grand scale. So I feel like decentralized protocols are critically important for the ecosystem.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to say, and Medha, you might have more input on this, but I know that when I was looking a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, when I was working to get institutional and family money, like family office money into the system, what people were waiting on and sort of begging for was clarity and regulation. Mm-hmm. They said, look, I can't put money into this. I'm controlling $1 billion. I'm controlling a $20 billion pension here. I can't put money into any of this until it's clear.
Yep.
Right. So I think it depends on who you're looking at. Like, it's going to slow us down, like a regular user. Sure. I think it's going to speed up the other side.
Yeah. I mean, regulatory clarity is absolutely what they're looking for. It's risk aversion, right? They will absolutely do everything they can to mitigate risk.
And do you feel like with that regulation, is that going to be coming down on all chains, certain chains? Do you think certain chains will be targeted first?
From what I've observed, they will look at a category. They tend to categorize technology. So they'll find a broad category and then implement regulation that way. So I don't think that they will necessarily go after specific chains, right? Like the Howey test was a very weak way to try to put us into some kind of a category. And they have, 10 or 15 different parameters they look at to see whether a public protocol is decentralized or not. So they'll definitely try to categorize, right? So I see, like, what is the notion of a DeFi protocol vis-a-vis a layer one, vis-a-vis a layer two? I see them, like, that's what I predict, is that they'll categorize it that way and then have rules around each category.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So my last question here for the panel, and we'll hand this one over to Kendall, but like, what is the holy grail of DeFi? Is there a holy grail? What does that look like?
I mean, for me, I think it's kind of the experimentation, right? The economic experimentation. I mean, it's been, at least for DeFi, it's been fascinating. I mean, it's the greatest economic sandbox that we've had, where we have billions of dollars sloshing around into like new models and new experiments. I mean, the other side of that, and more important, is probably disenfranchised, or like serving these disenfranchised communities that don't have access to the global financial system. I don't actually think we've done a particularly good job of getting there yet. I mean, starting to, for sure. I mean, maybe that's in some ways El Salvador. That's certainly, I think, actually South America in certain places, in Venezuela has seen like the greatest sort of like beginnings of that. But I think, we're still not really there in being able to serve those communities. So somewhere between the two, hopefully we can keep both. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I see composability as a holy grail, like Kendall, to resonate what Kendall said. I mean, being able to compose on economic primitives, we never had such a platform before, right? Like DeFi as a atomically composable, financial, Lego blocks. The sheer power of things like flash loans that are very, very crypto native, is just unraveling the behemoth, right? Like, so the holy grail is definitely composability, in my view.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's a little bit on the last part of what Kendall said. It's really about being able to sort of even out the economic disparities between the world. I mean, I think it's a sad reality that there's an invisible line that humans have created, and if you are born on one side of that one, then you have a very different world than if you're born on the other side of it. And stuff like this allows people the opportunity to, by using their brain for a little while, create something and potentially change the way that humans interact with finance in general, and make themselves come up a lot based on that. I know that in BSC gyms, I mean, the group's only 10,500 people, but I've had hundreds and hundreds of people from what you call third world countries who've said, holy cow, like just getting onto BSC, which is actually affordable for them, getting on here, I can now buy a house, right? And maybe that house doesn't cost a lot for someone who's not from a third world country, but for them, they've made a few $1,000s off of a couple bucks, right? And they've had the opportunity, and now they want to come back and they say, okay, I'm going to teach my community how to do this. I'm going to go around to the town next door to here, show them how to do this, and it gets more people sort of more people are able to participate in a system than what currently or what has traditionally been able to happen, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that I'm a big believer in DeFi. DeFi has changed my life, which is why I'm here today on this panel, just because of the power that has to financially include everybody from developing nations to developed countries. So I do want to roll this over kind of into our next round of questioning. Now that we've kind of seen the broader context of DeFi, what's going on in each particular niche, and talk about why we're all here today, which is why are alternative chains gaining traction? This is the last question. This is it. And I'll kind of start this off with Greg.
Oh, well, so, it's different properties, right? Like I can speak for Cosmos and maybe a little bit for Solana. From a Cosmos ecosystem standpoint, it is sovereignty. I mean, the chains that Cosmos SDK, tend to be used in are chains that are doing individual functions. Like Akash is a cloud computing platform where AKT token is used for paying for hosting fees, right? And it's low gas is absolute must, because without that we can't have a usable system. So usability optimized system the Cosmos ecosystem has are now, if you want a DeFi in this is essentially you use a Cosmos SDK and go through to interchain protocol. And so I think the uniqueness of it, and if you look at what Solana brings to the table, is high performance smart contracts, right? With 50 TPS, you can do things like 50x leverage trading on Solana that you can't do on Ethereum. So I think that unique properties of speed and sovereignty is what is attracting a lot of developers to these two ecosystems. Of course, I can have others speak for their respective platforms.
Awesome.
We're definitely seeing the affordability of transactions as a big driver, right? So gas fees on Ethereum are very, very high. It's actually cutting out. It's excluding, right, the early DeFi speculator, person that wants to get involved in DeFi. It's just too expensive. So that's definitely what we're seeing in our ecosystem.
Kendall and Ogle, we'll finish with you guys. We are running out of time, so we're going to keep these short.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll keep it short. Yeah, I mean, for us, similarly, we focused on usability, the usability side of like scalability. So that's cheap transactions, quick confirmations. And what they would do at Near is everybody on their account gets a human readable name, so you don't have this like, crazy string of characters. You can be Anon if you want to, but you don't have to be either.
I've got nothing more to add. These guys have said it all.
Excellent. Thank you all for joining us today. This has been awesome. We're going to hand it back over. Thanks all.